Today we will embark on a journey along the fine line between folklore and facts, where reality becomes scarier than any legends. This is not a horror script, this is our history. Are you ready to find out how simple curiosity turns tragedy into a spectacle and the human body into a fairground exhibit? October 1911. Elmer McCurdy, an unlucky train robber, dies in a shootout with the Oklahoma sheriff. His body, embalmed with arsenic for preservation, becomes the first link in a chain of unimaginable events. Instead of a grave, fairground tents. Instead of a monument, layer upon layer of phosphorescent paint, turning him into a ghastly exhibit. For decades, carnival visitors laugh, touch the mannequin, and take photos, unaware that they are holding the hand of a man whose death marked the beginning of a 65-year tour. 1976. The film crew of the $6 Million Man accidentally breaks the arm of a prop during filming at New Pike Park, revealing a bone that is too realistic to be fake. The examination shocks even the pathologists. Under 20 layers of paint lies a mummy, whose arteries still contain traces of arsenic. The investigation uncovers the body's journey through dozens of states, from Oklahoma fairs to a California amusement park. Each new owner added a detail to the legend. The corpse of a robber, a cowboy mummy, a lynching victim. Irony. McCurdy, who dreamed of fame, achieved it at the cost of becoming a posthumous performer. His final burial in 1977 puts an end to the saga, but the question remains: how many more mannequins in parks conceal human tragedies? October 1970. Colchester Bridge in Virginia. Bob Bennett and his fiancée park on the roadside, see a flash of white in the darkness. A figure in a bunny suit with an axe strikes the car window, shouting about trespassers. 10 days later, security guard Paul Phillips observes the same person. Now he's chopping the porch of an unfinished house, threatening to chop off heads. The police record 50 reports, but the evidence vanishes like mist. Legend has it that in 1904, a bus carrying patients from a mental institution crashed near this bridge. All but one were caught. Soon, rabbits were found hanging from trees, and later, the first victims. But the sheriff's documents debunk the myth. There is no record in the archives of an accident or missing patients. So, who is this person? A runaway patient obsessed with revenge? A hoaxer inspired by urban legends? Or does the land itself here spawn nightmares? The bridge still stands, its concrete arches remain silent, and local teenagers continue to come here at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of white ears in the headlights. May 1919. 8-year-old Raymond Robinson climbs onto the moored bridge to look at a bird's nest. His hand touches a 22,000-volt live wire. The flash permanently robs him of his eyes, nose, and right hand. But instead of sympathy, an urban legend turns him into the Green Man. At night, when the roads are empty, Raymond goes out onto Route 351. His face, scarred and disfigured, reflects the headlights with an eerie green glow. Thus, the myth of the ghostly harbinger of death is born. But those who dared to stop found not a monster, but a wise conversationalist. Local teenagers would give him cigarettes, gas station workers left him coffee, and truck drivers listened to his stories. Raymond died in 1985, but his shadow is still seen on the roadside. What is scarier, physical deformity or human indifference that turned a victim into an attraction? December 1999. Room 112 of the Ocean View Hotel in New Jersey. Guests have been complaining for weeks about the smell of rotten cabbage, but management blames it on the plumbing. Until a maid moving the mattress discovers the body of Saul Hernandez, neatly packed into the spring box, like a parcel addressed to eternity. The investigation reveals that the killer lived in the adjacent room while the victim decomposed just inches away from sleeping guests. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. In 1986, Daniel LaPlante sneaks into a Massachusetts family's home through a crawl space in the basement. For months, he hides within the walls, watching the family's life through drilled holes, stealing food, and moving things around. A living ghost in his own fortress. And in 2008, a Japanese homeless person hides for a year in a Tokyo bachelor's closet, only coming out under the cover of darkness. These cases are not coincidences. They reveal an ancient fear. Our homes do not protect us. They are traps where the walls hold the breath of uninvited guests. And beds become sarcophagi. After the Hernandez case, hotels implement mattress checks, But will that stop those who want to become part of your life without your knowledge? 2003. In the forest of Maus, on the border of Switzerland and Italy, hunters begin to report a strange figure. A tall man in a World War era gas mask and a long camouflage coat. Locals called him Loloyan, which in the dialect means the one who watches. Over the decades, he has been seen more than 100 times. He silently stands among the trees, disappearing behind boulders, leaving only the smell of rusty metal. In 2010, nature photographer Mark Venturi, while setting up a camera to film deer, accidentally captures him on film. The photo, published in the newspaper Lello, shocks the country. A blurred silhouette in a distorted mask, as if stepped out from the pages of a dystopia. But the real sensation awaits in 2013. A group of tourists finds in the forest thicket a neatly folded suit, a rusted gas mask, a cloak with Wehrmacht patches, and a note in a mix of French and Romansh. The police confirm the authenticity of the artifacts, but the identity of Lelo Jan remains a mystery. Was he a refugee hiding from the authorities, a soldier deserter stuck in a time loop, or a hoaxer whose game lasted exactly until the moment the legend began to live on its own? The Swiss forest remains silent, but every crack of a branch now makes travelers turn around. The 1970s. The ruins of Willowbrook Clinic on Staten Island. Concrete boxes with broken windows, where the wind roams through corridors smelling of disinfectant and despair. Here, yes, among the debris of wheelchairs, Andre Rand, a former orderly, finds a new home. He catches pigeons for food, sleeps in rooms for violent patients, and stalks his first victim. 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger. The girl with Down syndrome disappears on her way home from school in 1987. Her body is found a month later, a mile and a half from the clinic, wrapped in plastic. As if a parody of medical sterility. Rand comes under police scrutiny, but the real horror begins when investigators discover his collection. Children's dolls tied to trees, a calendar with marked dates of disappearances, and a map with crosses within a radius 10 miles. In court, it is revealed that he wasn't just copying the legend of Cropsey, he became it. His 25-year sentence did not stop the fears. Parents still hold their children's hands tighter when passing by the ivy-covered fence of Willowbrook. And at night, a creaking is heard in the ruins. A cart, as if someone continues the rounds. February 1994. Gloria Ramirez is admitted to the Riverside Emergency Room with a blood pressure of 200/120 and a pulse of 140 beats per minute. Nurse Susan Kane notices something strange. The patient's skin is covered with an oily film, smelling of almonds. When the doctor inserts the needle into the vein, a caustic smoke erupts from the syringe. Over the next 20 minutes, 23 hospital staff members lose consciousness, and 5 end up in intensive care. Hazmat teams and Level 4 biohazard suits decontaminate the area, but the answer comes from the lab. Gloria, trying to relieve cancer pain, was rubbing dimethyl sulfoxide into her skin. When mixed with oxygen in the syringe, the substance formed dimethylsulfone, a toxin that paralyzes the nervous system. But the legends had already spread beyond the hospital. Newspapers wrote about a woman whose blood melted concrete. Forums discussed government experiments. The real tragedy remains in the shadows. Gloria dies 4 hours after being admitted, never knowing she became a character in urban myths. Her grave in Riverside is still covered with candles. Some come to pay their respects, others are searching. Traces of the acid ghost. November 1922. Howard Carter opens Tutankhamun's burial chamber, discovering the inscription, "Death shall come on swift wings." To him who disturbs the peace of the pharaoh. 4 months later, Lord Carnarvon, the sponsor of the expedition, dies from blood poisoning after a mosquito bite. His dog howls on the lawn of Highclere Castle at the exact moment of his master's death. By 1929, out of the 22 people present at the opening, 16 die under strange circumstances. The suicide of archaeologist Arthur Mace, the disappearance of radiologist Archibald Reed, a stroke for the museum curator. The press screams about a curse, although Carter himself will live to be 64 years old. Scientists find rational explanations: fungal spores in the tomb, radioactive minerals, even poisons on the walls. But the true magic, the curses, lie in human psychology. Everyone who touched the treasures subconsciously expected retribution and received it through random coincidences that became fatal. Today, The Mask of Tutankhamun is the most visited exhibit in the Cairo Museum. Visitors whisper that sometimes a breath mark fogs up the glass display case. And the Leeds? January. -15 degrees Fahrenheit. The museum's night guards hear the creaking of bunks, as if invisible prisoners are turning over on wooden planks. In the children's blocks, cameras capture blurry spots and infrared photos. And in crematorium number 3, the temperature suddenly drops to freezing, even though the heating system is working fine. In 2005, a Japanese tourist records a video of a woman in a striped robe walking along the barbed wire. The image disappears from the camera's memory after 3 days. Scientists from Krakow University explain the phenomena with infrasound, geomagnetic anomalies, and collective psychosomatics. But survivor Lydia Maximovich in a 2010 interview said, "These are not ghosts, this is memory. The stones remember the screams, the earth remembers the ashes. On rainy nights, water runs down the walls of the barracks, leading dark streaks, like tears that history cannot shed." Ikigahara. The pines here grow at a 45-degree angle, as if trying to escape from the ground soaked with death. Every year, search teams mark trees with ribbons where backpacks hang at their bases. The final resting places of those who came here seeking eternal peace. In 2010, the police found 54 bodies during the season, but the real numbers remain a mystery. The wind carries farewell notes deep into the forest, where they turn into a carpet of ferns. Local guides speak of Yuri spirits, whispering in the ears of the desperate. It's quiet here. It won't part here. Scientists from the University of Tokyo explain the anomalies with volcanic rocks distorting the magnetic field, but those who survived a night in Aokigahara tell a different story. Truffle hunter Mosquito. In 2018, he got lost for 3 days. He was found half a mile from the trail, muttering about a woman in a white kimono who was leading him to a cliff. The forest falls silent when the sun sets, even the mosquitoes stop buzzing, and only the wind rustles the ribbons on the trees, as if counting down the time until the next discovery. 1970s. In 1970, a nursing student receives a vintage doll with a porcelain face and eyes the color of a stormy sky as a gift. A week later, Annabelle starts to move. She is found sitting on a chair instead of the shelf. Her fingers are bent in an unnatural position. The Warren family places her in a glass cabinet, but even there the doll does not calm down. Scratches appear on the glass, as if someone is writing letters from the inside. In 2014, paranormal researcher Mark Houston, after spending a night in the Warren Museum, records the temperature dropping to 46 degrees Fahrenheit near the display case. His recorder captures a voice whispering, "Don't look." But the creepiest fact is not the activity, but its cyclic nature. Every 11 years in October, the doll awakens, the display glass becomes covered with condensation, and sensors register a spike in electromagnetic radiation. What if objects absorb emotions like a sponge absorbs water? Then, Annabelle is not possession, but the quintessence of a child's pain whose life was cut too short. Amityville. 329 West Ocean Avenue. After the DeFeo family murders in 1974, the new owner George Lutz describes phenomena as if straight out of a nightmare. Green slime oozing from the walls, the temperature in the nursery dropping to -10 degrees, invisible hands grabbing at hair. But the real mystery is the secret room in the attic, discovered a week after moving in. Inside, they find ritual symbols scratched into the floor and a goat's skull with charred horns. Parapsychologists find traces of an underground passage leading to the foundation of the old Indian cemetery. After the Lutz family flees, the house becomes a magnet for thrill seekers. In 2003, a group of scientists from Boston University, after installing sensors, records infrasound waves at a frequency of 19 Hz, a level that induces panic in humans. But the rational explanation does not erase the main question. Why every Christmas does a green light appear in the windows of the house even though the building has been vacant for decades? Shibuya, Tokyo. A quarter-mile-long tunnel where in the 90s people disappeared as if dissolving into the concrete. In 1998, a student named Yumiko Tanaka, while passing through it, hears footsteps behind her. When she turns around, her flashlight reveals a silhouette in an Edo period kimono, emerging from the darkness. A second later, the light goes out, and the girl is found unconscious half a mile from the exit. A team of engineers investigating a ventilation accident in 2005 discovered electromagnetic anomalies with a strength of 50 milligauss. enough to cause hallucinations. But how do you explain the worker's diary found during the demolition of the tunnel in 2010? On the yellow pages are entries from 1945. They are following us. Their faces, they are not there. After the reconstruction, the disappearances stopped, but taxi drivers still refuse to stop at the new entrance. They say that at midnight, you can hear the clatter of wooden clogs, as if someone is hurrying into the shadow that has already been demolished. December 1983. The Brighton Beach line of the New York subway. Conductor James O'Connor swears he saw a ghost train. 8 empty cars with their lights on, speeding through the station without stopping. His radar shows a speed of 45 miles per hour. But there is no train or schedule on the tracks. Legend that these are the spirits of the disaster's victims. In 1918, when the train derailed in the tunnel under the East River, the deceased passengers, according to eyewitnesses, are still searching for a way out. In 2012, a group of explorers with thermal cameras recorded an anomaly. A heat spot in the shape of a train car moves through the abandoned tunnel. Engineers explained the phenomenon as an optical echo from old rails, but what about the dispatcher's records? In the subway archives, there are reports of alarm signals going off at night, exactly at the time of the crash. Why does the ghostly train appear only on the days of the winter solstice? And where does it disappear to after reaching the dead zone under Brooklyn? Detroit, Michigan. St. Mary's Children's Hospital, closed in 1982. Locals call it the House of Eternal Cough. At night, wheezing can be heard in the empty wards, and the operating room still smells of ether. In 2007, a team of researchers found nurse Alice Turner's journal in the basement, dated 1956. They don't leave, even after death. They ask for water, call for their mom. The creepiest artifact is a set of dolls made from gauze and bandages, hidden in the morgue wall. Each doll is marked with a name and date that match the stories of deceased patients. In 2020, urbanist Carter Reynolds discovered a shocking fact in the state archives. In the 50s, experiments with lobotomy were conducted here. Could the hospital have become a trap for souls, stuck between pain and oblivion? And why? At midnight, lights turn on the 3rd floor, even though the building has been disconnected from the grid since the 80s.